Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the world of the samurai, and more specifically, the quiet art of crafting their sword handles, an area of their weapon's design that's often overshadowed by the brilliance of the blade itself. Imagine it. You're up before dawn, the air cool and crisp around you as you stretch, preparing yourself for another day of delicate craftsmanship. The handle of a samurai sword is more than just a simple grip. It's a piece of art, a symbol of prestige, and something that allows a warrior to perform the graceful yet deadly movements needed in battle. This is where your journey begins today. Now, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, drop your location and the time where you're listening from in the comments. Let's see where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As you slip on your gloves and prepare to begin your work for the day, the first task is clear. You must get your hands on the right materials. The world of the samurai sword handle isn't a hasty affair. Every decision must be made with purpose, as the sword's hilt isn't just a functional piece, but a symbolic one too. You start with a solid foundation, wood. The selection of wood is crucial. Not just any piece will do. It must be strong, yet flexible, capable of withstanding the rigors of battle and time. Some historians still argue whether it was truly essential for the wood to be aged for decades before it was used, or whether this was simply a tradition passed down through generations. You stand in front of the woodpile, choosing only the finest. It's a painstaking task. You've heard the stories. Samurai of the highest rank would use only the strongest wood, often selecting rare species like magnolia, which was admired for its strength and smooth texture. The grain must be flawless, smooth to the touch, and tough enough to withstand the weight of the blade it would bear. It's said that the right piece of wood could take years to find, and the crafting process began only when the wood had settled into its prime. As you run your fingers along the edge of the wood, you feel its weight, its connection to history, its future in the making. The samurai understood that every part of the sword, including its handle, was not just a tool, but an extension of their spirit. The sword, the handle, the hilt, they were all interconnected, all fused into one being, one weapon. And so, the process of crafting the handle would be treated with reverence and care. Some craftsmen took an almost spiritual approach to it, dedicating hours, even days, to perfecting every inch of the handle. And now, with the wood selected, it's time to craft. But before you start shaping, you take a step back. You think about the samurai who will eventually wield this sword, their pride, their honor, their soul. Historians still argue whether it was the handle or the blade that truly defined the samurai's connection to their sword. Some say it was the blade that carried all the meaning, while others insist the handle was just as crucial, if not more so. Either way, the creation of the handle has begun, and there is no turning back. It is a slow, meticulous process. You trim and carve, your hands deftly following the natural grain of the wood, taking care to preserve its strength. With every cut, you imagine the warrior who will hold it, fingers curling around the smooth handle, feeling the weight of the blade balance in their hands. There is something about this moment that makes you pause, a quiet understanding between you, the wood, and the warrior who will carry this sword into battle. You can almost hear the distant clash of steel as you shape this simple piece into something far greater than just a tool. But it's not just about carving the wood. It's about shaping it to reflect something deeper: honor, pride, legacy. The handle, while practical, is also a statement, a testament to the samurai's status. It's decorated with symbols, perhaps family crests, intricate engravings, or lucky charms. The handle may also be shaped to fit the warrior's hand perfectly, as though the two were always meant to be one. It's no surprise that these handles were passed down from generation to generation, as valuable as the sword itself. The day is unfolding in front of you, as the next step of crafting the samurai sword handle comes into view. After your careful shaping of the wood, you now turn your attention to the finer details, those that will transform the handle from a simple piece of wood into a functional and beautiful work of art. The fittings, the guard, the pommel, the wrapping. All of these elements contribute not only to the sword's function, but also to its elegance and symbolism. You've spent hours perfecting the base, but this is where the sword truly starts to take on its final form. It's time to consider the tsuba, the guard of the sword. As a craftsman, you know that the guard is not only a piece of decoration, but a critical part of the weapon's functionality. It prevents your hand from slipping onto the blade during a fight, providing a sense of safety, that allows the samurai to wield their weapon with precision. The shape and design of the guard were often influenced by the family crest or symbolic motifs of the sword's owner. Some samurai would even carry custom-made guards, with intricate carvings reflecting their personal life or status. This was not just a sword, this was a statement. As you shape the guard, you imagine the samurai warrior whose hand will one day rest on this very fitting, and you feel the weight of tradition in each delicate strike. There's a delicate dance between form and function in your work, and though the guard is, in essence, a protector, its beauty is undeniable. Whether adorned with images of dragons, cherry blossoms, or waves, it tells the story of the warrior before they ever step into battle. Next, you shift your focus to the pommel, the end of the sword handle, which balances the weight of the blade. The pommel not only provides that crucial balance, but often carried additional symbolic meaning. You reflect on how, for some samurai, the pommel could even be a secret compartment, a place to hide small items like poisons, letters, or other personal treasures. Some historians argue that this secret compartment, though rare, was a testament to the samurai's vigilance and preparedness for all situations, even the most dire. As you craft the pommel, you realize that even these small elements of the sword handle speak volumes about the warrior's mindset. Their sword was not just a weapon, it was a personal companion, a tool for survival, and a reflection of their very soul. You smooth out the imperfections of the pommel, knowing that it's the final touch that will complete the whole. But there's more to do. The final component of the sword handle, the wrapping. The Tsuka is the binding of the handle, a piece of silk cord tightly wound around the hilt. This wrapping is not only functional, providing grip, but it is also an art form. Samurai had different preferences when it came to the design of the wrap, with some opting for simpler, more traditional styles, while others demanded complex patterns that would mark them as unique. The wrapping process is slow and deliberate, your hands moving carefully, methodically, as the cord winds around the handle. Historians still argue whether the tightness of the wrapping was simply a matter of practicality, or if it was meant to reflect the warrior's strength and resolve. Some believe that the tighter the wrap, the more formidable the warrior's grip, a symbol of their readiness for battle. But as you continue to wind the cord around the handle, you realize that there's more to it than that. This is a process that requires not only skill, but also a connection to the warrior's spirit. You imagine them, their hands gripping this very sword, preparing for the challenges ahead. The wrapping is crucial. It provides the perfect grip, enabling the samurai to swing, block, and parry with fluidity and precision. But the wrapping also serves a second purpose. It adds to the overall aesthetic beauty of the sword. The way the cord winds and weaves tells a story about the warrior's background, their family, and their place in society. Some samurai even used the wrapping as a way to showcase their unique identity, creating personalized patterns that were only known to their family and close friends. And as you complete the wrapping, your work is almost finished. The sword handle now gleams with the quiet pride of craftsmanship, each element carefully considered, each detail deliberate. You stand back and take in your creation, the handle you've worked so diligently on, and you know that this sword is no longer just a weapon. It's an extension of the samurai who will wield it, an expression of their strength, their legacy, and their honor. As the day presses on, you step back from your work to reflect on the deeper meaning behind your craft. You've completed the handle, the guard is secure, the pommel is in place, and the Tsuka wraps snugly around the wood. But there's still more to think about. It's not just about crafting a sword handle. This is about building a connection between the warrior and their weapon, a sacred bond that could define a samurai's fate on the battlefield. You begin to consider the practical role of the handle in the samurai's life, how it directly influences their combat style. The samurai were renowned for their discipline and precision, and every part of their sword, including the handle, had to meet the highest standards of functionality. It wasn't just a matter of creating a weapon, it was about crafting an extension of the warrior's will, one that could respond with fluidity and grace. Samurai fought with a philosophy in mind, believing their blade should be a seamless part of their own body, wielded with the same ease as drawing a breath. The handle played a vital role in this connection. The importance of balance becomes evident to you now as you assess the proportions of the handle and blade. The right balance meant the difference between an awkward, clumsy swing and a swift, calculated strike. Historians still argue whether the samurai considered balance to be more important than the sharpness of the blade itself. Some believe that a well-balanced sword handle was more of a priority than the blade's edge because it allowed the samurai to fight longer and more effectively. The ability to wield the sword in a fluid, controlled manner meant that the warrior could use the sword more skillfully, making it just as deadly in the hands of a master as the blade itself. The truth is, a poorly balanced handle could throw a warrior off completely. Imagine trying to swing a sword that feels too heavy at the tip or too light in the grip. Nothing would feel right. But with the right balance, the sword becomes a natural extension of the body, a tool that becomes a part of the warrior's instincts. You visualize the samurai in their full armor, their hands grasping the perfectly balanced sword handle, moving fluidly in perfect harmony with the blade. You pause for a moment to appreciate the fact that you're not just crafting a handle, you're shaping a weapon that speaks to centuries of tradition. The samurai were, in many ways, warriors of ritual. Every strike, every movement was deliberate and precise. And as you contemplate the balance between beauty and functionality in your sword handle, you begin to realize the sacred duty that comes with your craft. The sword is not just an object, it's a tool that carries the weight of history, the essence of the warrior. Your hands move naturally now, as you prepare to wrap up the final touches. The Tsuka, the tight silk wrapping you've carefully layered around the handle, may seem like a simple task to some. But for the samurai, this wrapping was more than just an aesthetic choice. It was a personal expression, a mark of identity. Each warrior had their preferences for how tightly the cord should be wound, and it wasn't just for comfort. The wrapping could also be a reflection of their personal philosophy or style. Some samurai preferred a tight, disciplined wrap, symbolizing their unyielding nature and commitment to perfection. Others favored a looser, more relaxed wrapping, perhaps indicating a more spiritual or fluid approach to combat. And some, especially those of higher rank, may have chosen intricate patterns woven into the silk, displaying their family crest or symbols of their clan. The wrapping wasn't just practical, it was a visual reflection of the warrior's inner self, their approach to life, and even their hopes for victory. As you finish the wrapping, you take a step back to admire the way the handle looks. The silk cord gleams in the light, winding around the wood in perfect precision. The guard is strong and secure, the pommel balanced just right. There's an unspoken beauty to the sword now. It's not just a weapon, it's a symbol. This handle, this piece of craftsmanship, is now a part of the warrior, and you feel a quiet pride in the work you've done. But it's more than just about the visual beauty. It's about how the handle feels in the warrior's hand. It's about how it fits perfectly, how it responds with the same grace as the warrior's own movements. In a way, you've just crafted a weapon that represents much more than its functional purpose. You've created something that carries the weight of tradition, philosophy, and history. The samurai warrior who will wield this sword will hold a piece of their identity, their honor, and their status in their hands. You're not just crafting a handle, you're creating a bond that will endure through centuries. The next step in your journey through the samurai sword handle craft is to understand the sword's deeper cultural and symbolic significance. This is where the handle transcends its role as just a piece of functional design. The creation of a samurai sword is a deeply personal act, woven into the very fabric of the samurai warrior's life. Every part of the sword, including its handle, must embody not just craftsmanship but also honor, status, and identity. It's a piece of the soul, carried into battle. The samurai sword handle, particularly the wrapping, or tsuka, is more than just a practical design feature. It has cultural depth. As you examine the finished handle, you realize that this part of the sword plays a direct role in the samurai's sense of self and their personal connection to the weapon. Each samurai, depending on their rank, would have different tastes and preferences in how they wanted their sword handle crafted. The design and craftsmanship of the handle communicated to the world not just who they were, but who they aspired to be. Some samurai would engrave symbols into the handle, or even inscribe prayers for protection during battle. The idea of the sword as an extension of the soul was pervasive, and the more intricate and personalized the handle, the greater the samurai's perceived strength and honor. The wrapping itself could also take on special meaning, with different patterns signifying different clans or allegiances. In this way, the handle was a very personal part of the sword that could help the warrior display their individual identity and spiritual beliefs. Historians still argue whether the samurai considered the personal embellishments of the sword handle to be more about aesthetics or more about spiritual protection. Some believe that samurai, who often lived by a code of bushido, the way of the warrior, placed greater emphasis on the symbolism of the sword handle and how it represented their moral compass. Others suggest that the embellishments were just as much about pride and status, a way of showing off their rank to others in a highly competitive and hierarchical society. Either way, this part of the sword wasn't just decorative. It was a reflection of the warrior's relationship with their weapon. As you look over your work now, it's clear that you've crafted more than just a functional piece. The sword handle is beginning to take on a life of its own, imbued with meaning, history, and the spirit of the samurai. You've made sure every aspect of the handle, the grip, the wrapping, the fittings, is perfect. You pause to admire your work, knowing that the samurai who will wield this sword will not just be holding a weapon, but an extension of themselves. Moving on, you realize that the role of the handle extends beyond the aesthetic. It is, above all, an important part of the warrior's daily life. Every part of the sword handle, from the tightness of the wrapping to the firmness of the guard, is designed with practical purpose in mind. But it's also a symbol that goes beyond battle. The handle could reveal the warrior's beliefs, their approach to life, and their role in society. In medieval Japan, samurai were often required to serve as both warriors and scholars. Their swords were more than just weapons of war. They were tools of honor, and the care with which their handles were crafted was directly tied to the samurai's social standing. It wasn't uncommon for samurai to carry their swords at all times, even while performing everyday tasks, which made the sword, and by extension, the sword handle, an essential part of their identity. The samurai's sword handle was often passed down through generations, a cherished heirloom that carried the wisdom and honor of their ancestors. You think about the many samurai families who entrusted their swords to the care of skilled craftsmen like yourself. The handle would be part of the family's legacy, passed from father to son, warrior to warrior. It was a sacred duty to keep the sword, and by extension the handle, maintained and ready for battle, a constant reminder of the family's honor and strength. But the handle also played a role in rituals, especially those associated with the samurai's death. In some cases, when a samurai died, their sword and its handle were considered an integral part of their funeral rites. The sword would be carefully cleaned, and the handle would be wrapped in special cloths as part of the ritual. It was said that a samurai's spirit resided in their sword, and thus, the sword's handle was treated with the utmost respect during these ceremonies. The samurai's sword, along with its handle, was believed to carry the warrior's spirit into the afterlife, ensuring that their legacy would live on. It's fascinating, really, how much of the samurai's life and death was bound up in the craftsmanship of the sword handle. You can almost feel the weight of the history surrounding it as you work, knowing that the finished handle will become part of something much larger than yourself. It's more than just a piece of wood and silk. It's a living history, a connection to centuries of warriors who have wielded such blades. It is a bridge between the past and present, a living testament to the samurai's code and legacy. The sun begins to dip lower in the sky, signaling the end of a long day of crafting, but there's still more to explore. As you sit back and admire your work, the handle now complete, a flawless piece of craftsmanship, you can't help but think about the warrior who will eventually wield this sword. What does this handle mean to them? How will they hold it? Will it fit perfectly into their hand, creating that seamless connection between the body and the blade? You've now crafted a samurai sword handle that's not just a tool, but a bridge between life and death, a symbolic object that carries the weight of generations. But there's more to this story. The samurai's connection to their sword, and to the handle, was more than just about physical strength or even combat. It was deeply rooted in philosophy, spirituality, and a personal code of ethics. The sword handle, in all its beautiful craftsmanship, represented not just physical protection, but spiritual protection. The connection between a samurai and their sword was spiritual, almost sacred. The sword wasn't just something they used in battle. It was something they lived with, something they identified with. The very act of crafting the handle was an act of aligning the warrior with their purpose, their duty. As you hold the finished sword in your hands, you realize that this was more than just a job for the samurai. It was a reflection of their commitment to the bushido code, the way of the warrior, which governed every aspect of their life. Historians still debate whether the samurai saw their sword as a tool of war or as a spiritual weapon, something that could transcend the battlefield. Many argue that the samurai, living by bushido, saw their sword, and its handle, not only as a weapon but as a manifestation of their personal honor and character. The sword's handle, with its intricate wrapping and beautiful design, was a reflection of their inner state. If the samurai were calm, focused, and disciplined, their sword would mirror those qualities. If they were angry, unfocused, or unsteady, that would be reflected in how they wielded their sword. The handle also held great significance in the samurai's daily life outside of combat. It wasn't unusual for samurai to treat their swords as a companion, taking it with them even when they weren't engaged in battle. Samurai would often take care to ensure that their sword handle was cleaned, wrapped, and maintained with the same care as any other piece of their armor or weaponry. In fact, it wasn't just the handle. Every part of the sword required attention, but the handle was where the warrior's hand connected with the blade. It was a part of them. It became an extension of themselves. As you continue to ponder the sword's symbolic meaning, you realize that its presence in samurai life wasn't confined just to battles. It was also integral to their honor and status in society. The sword, particularly its handle, was a key element in how samurai were perceived by others. A finely crafted handle made a statement. It showcased the samurai's wealth, their taste, and their level of social status. A simple, plain handle could signify a lower rank or less important samurai, while a handle adorned with intricate designs and personalized engravings could indicate someone of great importance. Your craft, then, is more than just function. It's a marker of social hierarchy. The symbolism of the sword handle is more evident when you look at how it was used in ritual and ceremonies. For the samurai, the sword handle wasn't only a part of their weapon, it was central to many of the rituals that took place before and after battle. Before stepping onto the battlefield, the samurai would often meditate, focusing their mind and spirit, and during this time, they would hold their sword, feeling the handle, grounding themselves in the weight of their weapon and the responsibility it carried. In some cases, the sword handle would also be part of the samurai's funeral rites. After a samurai passed away, the sword, including the handle, would be carefully cleaned and polished, as if preparing it for its final journey. The handle would be wrapped in special cloths, and it was often kept by the family as a reminder of the samurai's legacy. It was believed that the spirit of the warrior would remain within the sword, and that it would guide future generations in their own battles, both physical and spiritual. And so, as the final touches are put on the handle, you begin to see that this isn't just about creating a weapon. It's about creating something that transcends time, something that will carry the legacy of the samurai forward, long after the warrior has fallen. You stand back and take one last look at the finished product. The handle gleams softly in the light, a perfect balance of form and function, beauty and power. It's more than just a part of the sword. It's a living testament to the samurai's way of life, their culture, and their honor. As you finish your work, you feel a sense of satisfaction, not just as a craftsman, but as a part of something much larger than yourself. You have helped create not just a sword but a piece of history, a piece of the samurai soul. The night has fully settled around you now, and you take a quiet breath, letting the weight of your day's work linger in the air. Your craftsmanship has come to a conclusion, but the work of understanding the full story of the sword handle, the legacy, the symbolism, the cultural significance, is far from over. In many ways, the sword handle has taken on a life of its own, evolving from a mere tool into something much deeper. But what happens next? What is the final chapter in the life of this handle, this weapon, this symbol? The final step in the life of a sword handle begins when it's finally in the hands of its intended samurai. As you know, the samurai were not simply warriors. They were often scholars, poets, and philosophers. The sword was part of their identity, a tool for survival, but also a reflection of their personal philosophy. The handle, with its delicate wrapping and intricate fittings, was not just about how the sword would be used in battle. It was about how the samurai saw themselves and how they wanted the world to see them. Historians still argue whether the samurai were more concerned with the aesthetics of their sword or with its functionality. Some claim that the elaborate designs and personal engravings were meant to showcase the warrior's wealth and social standing, while others believe the symbols etched into the handle were more a reflection of the samurai's personal beliefs and spiritual journey. The truth, as with most things in samurai culture, is likely somewhere in between. For the samurai, the sword handle was both a means of showing power and a personal connection to their heritage, honor, and philosophy. When the samurai grasps their sword handle, they don't just hold a weapon, they hold a piece of their identity. The act of wielding the sword was a powerful ritual, one that connected them to their ancestors, their sense of duty, and their inner self. Every strike, every movement, became a reflection of the warrior's soul. The handle, tightly gripped in their hands, was the medium through which their spirit and their sword became one. And as the samurai practiced, trained, and prepared for battle, their sword handle became more than just a part of their weapon. It was a part of their body, their very being. As you finish crafting your handle, you feel the weight of history in your hands. It's not just about the sword itself, it's about the people who used it and the way their lives were intertwined with this weapon. You realize that in crafting the handle, you've done more than build a piece of wood and cord. You've created a connection between the past and the future. The samurai who holds this sword will become part of a long line of warriors, each of whom will wield their sword with pride, with precision, and with honor. The symbolism of the sword handle extends far beyond its functionality. It's said that samurai believed their swords could communicate with them, responding to their emotions, their thoughts, and their intentions. The handle, with its carefully chosen wood and intricate wrapping, was not just a passive part of the sword. It was an active participant in the battle, a silent partner in the warrior's quest for honor and victory. When the samurai held the sword, they were not just fighting with a tool, they were fighting with a partner, one that reflected their very essence. You stand back, the work complete, and think about how the samurai would view their swords after they've passed away. The sword, along with its handle, would be carefully maintained and passed down through generations. It wasn't just a weapon, it was an heirloom, a family treasure that would carry the warrior's spirit long after their death. When a samurai died, their sword was considered sacred, and its handle, often wrapped in special cloth, would be preserved as a cherished part of their legacy. The handle would outlast the warrior, a permanent testament to their honor and strength. In a way, the samurai sword handle tells the story of life, death, and everything in between. From the moment the craftsman selects the wood, to the careful fitting of the guard, to the intricate wrapping of the handle, every step in the process is part of a greater story. The sword handle is both a symbol of the samurai's identity and a tool that will accompany them in their battles. It will be their partner in war, and it will be their companion in death, representing their strength and honor for generations to come. The final resting place of the samurai sword, with its handle still intact, is a poignant symbol of the warrior's enduring legacy. The sword, passed down from father to son, from warrior to warrior, holds within it the history of the samurai. And while the physical blade may be worn down over time, the handle remains, just as the spirit of the samurai endures through the ages. As you complete the final steps of your craft, you realize that your work is more than just about the creation of a weapon. It's about creating a piece of history, a connection to the past, and a future that will live on in the hands of those who carry it. And as you place the completed sword on the table before you, ready for its eventual wielder, you understand that you've created more than just a piece of wood and silk. You've crafted a legacy, a living connection between the past, present, and future. As the evening settles around you, the sword handle lies before you, a finished work that carries not just your craftsmanship, but the weight of centuries of history. But before we let this weapon rest, there's still more to uncover about the life of a samurai sword handle. How did it continue to shape the warrior's experience after it was completed? How did this humble yet vital part of the weapon continue to influence both the sword and its wielder throughout the years? Let's take a moment to reflect on how, once the sword handle is crafted and the sword is finished, it moves into the samurai's daily life, becoming more than a mere weapon, transforming into an integral part of their existence. The samurai often carried their swords with them at all times, even when not in battle. This wasn't just a matter of practicality, it was about maintaining their honor, their sense of self. The sword was not just a tool for defense, it was a symbol, a constant reminder of who they were. But there's a surprising nuance here. The sword handle was more than a means to hold the sword, it was a tactile connection between the warrior and their identity. The samurai believed that their sword was an extension of themselves, that it could feel the warrior's emotions, intentions, and mental state. Some argue that the grip of the sword handle, how tight or loose the samurai held it, could reflect their mental and emotional state. For instance, if a samurai were calm and composed, their grip would be steady, and the sword would move with precision. But if they were angry or unsure, the sword would reflect that, moving erratically or unwieldy. Historians still argue whether this connection between the samurai and their sword was purely metaphorical, or if it was a belief the samurai genuinely held. Did they truly feel a bond with their sword? Some suggest that it was the result of years of practice, honing their craft until the sword became an extension of their body. Others believe the connection was deeper than that, rooted in the spiritual beliefs of the samurai. For them, their sword wasn't just an object, it was a reflection of their soul, and the handle, in particular, played an essential role in that bond. The act of drawing the sword from its sheath, for example, was a ritual of great significance for the samurai. They would do so with fluidity and precision, as if performing a carefully choreographed dance. The handle, fitting perfectly into the warrior's grip, allowed for this smooth movement, a sign of their deep connection with their weapon. The way the samurai handled their sword was a reflection of their mastery over both their weapon and their emotions. It wasn't just about combat either. The samurai carried their swords to social events, often using the sword handle as a means of signaling their status. The ornate designs of the sword's fittings, the material of the handle, and the complexity of the wrapping all spoke volumes about the samurai's rank and standing in society. A simple, plain handle might suggest a lesser warrior, while a beautifully decorated handle signaled a high-ranking individual. The sword, and specifically the handle, became a symbol of power and prestige, just as much as it was a functional weapon. The act of gripping the handle, then, was a quiet but powerful statement about who the samurai was and where they stood. This didn't change after the samurai's death. The sword and its handle, passed down through generations, became a family heirloom, a symbol of the warrior's legacy. The care with which a sword handle was crafted was a direct reflection of how the warrior's family viewed their place in society. The sword would be preserved, and so too would the handle, often passed down from father to son, generation after generation. The sword's handle, in this way, transcended its physical form. It became a vehicle for memory and history. It wasn't just a weapon that was wielded in battle, it was a story that was told for generations, a piece of the family's history that was carried from one warrior to the next. This gave the sword, and particularly the handle, an incredible emotional weight. It wasn't just a tool, it was a legacy, a continuous thread between past, present, and future. As you look down at the handle in front of you, you realize how much more it represents than just craftsmanship. It holds a piece of history, a piece of identity, and a piece of the spirit of the samurai. This handle is now a part of something larger than itself. It's more than a weapon. It's a tradition, a connection, a symbol that will carry on through generations of warriors who will hold it, pass it on, and live by the code it represents. The samurai sword handle has lived a life beyond the battlefield, from the careful crafting process to the hands of the warrior, and finally, into the family's legacy. It's a physical reminder that honor and tradition endure long after the warrior is gone. The handle, as simple as it may seem, is a powerful vessel for memory, a testament to a life lived with purpose and precision. You step away from your work, the handle now complete, and you realize that it is much more than what it appears on the surface. It's not just a piece of wood and cord, it's a connection between past and future, a symbol of strength and honor that will live on in the hands of those who come after. This humble handle will carry the spirit of the samurai forward, long after the last battle has been fought. You can almost hear the echo of past warriors, their hands gripping the handle of a sword just like the one you've crafted, each warrior leaving their mark on the blade, on the handle, and on history itself. As the moonlight softly filters through the window, you can't help but reflect on how the sword handle's life continues even after it leaves the workshop. The connection between the sword, its handle, and the samurai warrior doesn't end when the blade is sheathed or placed back into its stand. No, the handle continues its journey beyond the physical realm. With each new hand that grasps it, with each new battle fought, the sword handle becomes an extension of something much larger than any individual warrior. Once a samurai has passed, the sword and its handle take on new significance. They are no longer just tools of war. They become sacred relics, preserved with the utmost care by the family and passed down through generations. The handle, in particular, retains the spirit of the warrior, often serving as a symbol of the family's honor, pride, and legacy. Some samurai families even had special rituals for handling and maintaining their swords after death, treating them as both a physical and spiritual heirloom. The sword handle would be carefully cleaned, polished, and sometimes rewrapped to maintain its connection to the samurai's essence. In many ways, the passing of the sword from one generation to the next mirrored the way the samurai passed on their traditions and values. The sword handle wasn't just a weapon. It was a representation of a family's history, its struggles, its triumphs, and its way of life. Every scratch, every mark on the handle told the story of the samurai who wielded it. The samurai who took the sword from their father or grandfather would, in a sense, continue the work of their ancestors. The sword handle was a continuous link between generations, a connection that could never be severed, no matter how much time passed. Historians still argue over how much the samurai viewed their swords, and by extension their sword handles, as spiritual objects. Some scholars suggest that the sword was seen as an extension of the samurai's soul, while others believed that it was primarily a tool for survival, a means of executing their deadly skills. Regardless of the interpretation, there's little doubt that the sword handle played a pivotal role in how the samurai experienced the world. It was, after all, an integral part of the weapon that connected them to their ancestors, to their clan, and to the warriors' code they followed. When samurai families passed down their swords, the handle often became a point of focus, being admired and treated with reverence. The handle's intricate wrapping and ornamentation would often bear the family crest or symbols of personal significance, marking the blade as a treasured possession that should be treated with the utmost care. To hold the handle of a samurai sword was to hold a piece of the past, to connect with the stories and struggles of those who had come before. As the sword was passed down through generations, its handle continued to evolve. Some families would have new fittings made to match the new generation's aesthetic preferences, but the original handle, with its deep connection to the samurai's honor and spirit, would remain intact. It's fascinating to consider how many hands have gripped that very handle over the centuries, each one adding their own mark to the sword's history. The handle, in a sense, becomes a mirror of the samurai's family lineage, and each new owner would feel the weight of that legacy as they gripped it. But what happens when the sword finally reaches the end of its journey? What happens when the last warrior who holds the sword, who grips that handle, passes on? The answer is simple. The sword and its handle live on, continuing to represent the family's honor, even after the last battle has been fought. The sword handle, carefully maintained, becomes a symbol of continuity, ensuring that the samurai's legacy lives on long after the blade has been sheathed for the last time. Perhaps the most poignant aspect of this journey is that the sword's handle, much like the samurai themselves, is not just about strength or power. It is about grace, precision, and the ability to adapt. The handle itself has been shaped by generations of craftsmen, each adding their touch to the legacy, ensuring that it remains both functional and symbolic. And as the sword and its handle are passed down, they become more than just a weapon. They become a reminder of the importance of family, honor, and legacy. Each grip, each battle, each moment spent with the sword is a part of the larger narrative of the samurai's life. The samurai sword handle represents not just an object of war, but a cultural artifact, a symbol of the deep connection between the samurai's identity and their weapon. It was both a tool and a statement, a deeply personal reflection of the samurai's soul. And as you finish your work for the day, knowing that the handle is now complete, you realize that your craftsmanship has added to a legacy that stretches far beyond the present. This sword and this handle will live on, through the generations, through the warriors, and through the very spirit of the samurai. As you step away from your work, the weight of the sword handle in your hands feels almost symbolic, more than just a physical object, but a testament to a tradition that spans centuries. The handle, a seemingly simple piece of craftsmanship, has lived through many lifetimes. It has seen countless battles, experienced the ebb and flow of history, and carried with it the spirit of countless samurai warriors who have fought, lived, and died by it. The story of the samurai sword handle is one that weaves through the entire life of the samurai, from their birth to their death and beyond. But it's important to understand that the story of the sword doesn't end with the death of its owner. The sword and its handle, especially in the samurai tradition, were considered to be the ultimate symbol of a warrior's legacy. As a weapon, the sword was not just a tool of destruction, it was a vehicle of honor, a representation of a samurai's personal journey and their adherence to the bushido code. Historians continue to debate the deeper spiritual connection the samurai had with their swords. Some believe that samurai viewed their sword as a living being, something that had a soul of its own, a tool that resonated with the emotional and spiritual state of its wielder. This belief in the sword as something alive could be traced back to Shintoism, the animist belief system in Japan that sees a spiritual essence in all things. The samurai would take great care in maintaining their sword, regularly cleaning and polishing it as a way of nurturing the spirit within the weapon. The sword handle was often regarded with the same reverence. When a samurai passed away, their sword, including its handle, was treated with the utmost respect. The samurai's sword was sometimes buried with them, ensuring that their spirit would live on in the blade. In other cases, the sword was passed down through the generations, with the handle serving as a reminder of the warrior's lineage. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a family heirloom, a piece of the family's history, and a representation of their honor. The passing down of the sword from one generation to the next became a ritual in itself. The handle was carefully inspected, and any damage or wear would be repaired. The wrapping would often be replaced, and the fittings might be reworked to suit the tastes of the next samurai. But the essence of the sword, particularly the handle, remained unchanged. It was a link to the past, a connection between generations, a symbol of the warrior spirit that transcended time. In many ways, the samurai sword handle became a family's most cherished possession. It was not just about the material worth of the sword, but about what it represented. The sword was a family's pride, a legacy passed down from father to son, from one warrior to the next. And as the generations passed, the sword handle took on even greater significance. The more it was passed down, the more it became imbued with the spirit of the ancestors who had wielded it before. You think about the countless samurai who have gripped this very handle, each adding their own story to the sword's history. Each warrior would have infused the sword with their own personal essence, their own energy, their own life force. The handle is more than just a piece of wood. It is a vessel for the spirit of the samurai, a physical representation of their soul. And as the handle passes from one hand to another, the legacy of the samurai lives on. You begin to realize that the process of crafting a sword handle is not just about making a weapon. It's about preserving a tradition, about connecting with something much larger than yourself. The sword handle, simple as it may seem, is the heart of the samurai sword. It is where the warrior's hand meets the blade, where their strength, focus, and spirit are transferred into the weapon. Without the handle, the sword would be nothing more than a blade, an empty tool. But with the handle, it becomes something greater, a living, breathing part of the samurai, an extension of their very soul. As you place the finished handle carefully on the table before you, you take a moment to appreciate its deeper meaning. It is more than just a part of a sword. It is a piece of history, a piece of identity, and a piece of the spirit of the samurai. It is the embodiment of the warrior's legacy, passed down through generations, a constant reminder of their honor and strength. You stand back, the silence in the room settling around you, and for a moment, it feels as if the weight of centuries of history is in the air. The handle is complete, the sword is finished, and it will go on to carry the spirit of the samurai into the future. You can almost hear the soft hum of past warriors, their hands gripping the same handle, feeling its connection to the past, its promise of strength and honor. And with that final thought, you let out a long, calming breath, knowing that your work has not only created a weapon, but has also preserved a piece of the samurai spirit for generations to come. As the evening settles into a quiet lull, you take a moment to reflect on the process that's unfolded before you. The samurai sword handle that you've crafted has become more than just a simple piece of wood, metal, and silk. It's a vessel for memory, for legacy, for identity. And as you consider the warrior who will one day grip this handle, you can't help but marvel at the bond that has existed between the samurai and their weapon throughout history. The life of a samurai sword handle is filled with meaning, layered with centuries of tradition, culture, and purpose. From its careful creation in the workshop to its eventual placement in the hands of a warrior, the handle is a silent witness to the struggles, triumphs, and sacrifices of those who wield it. And once it has been passed down through generations, it becomes a living testament to the warrior spirit, a piece of history that endures long after the battle is over. As you continue to reflect on the sword handle's journey, you begin to understand just how deeply entwined it is with the philosophy of the samurai. The way they cared for their swords, how they maintained the handle, polished the blade, and revered the weapon as an extension of their body, reveals much about the warrior's mindset. For the samurai, their sword wasn't just a tool for war, it was a reflection of their inner discipline, their sense of duty, and their adherence to the code of bushido. The careful craftsmanship that goes into creating the sword handle reflects the samurai's own philosophy. It's about precision, patience, and respect. Every movement, every cut, every wrap is a testament to the samurai's understanding of the importance of their sword. The handle is not something that can be rushed or taken lightly. It must be crafted with care, as the samurai themselves must live with discipline and purpose. The act of crafting the sword handle, then, is not just a physical task, it's a spiritual one. The sword handle, especially the wrapping, is where this philosophy comes to life. The Tsuka, the silk cord wrapped tightly around the handle, is more than just a way to secure the grip. It's a way to embody the samurai's philosophy in physical form. The tension in the wrapping, the careful arrangement of the cord, reflects the tension the samurai felt in their own lives. The sword handle, as it's wrapped, becomes a metaphor for the samurai's own struggle between strength and grace, between purpose and the burden of their duty. As you complete the last touches on the handle, you pause to think about the rituals associated with the sword. The sword handle is not just a utilitarian object. It's a part of something much larger, a part of a spiritual tradition that spans generations. The care and reverence that goes into the sword's creation, and the way it's passed down through the family, is an act of honoring the past while also looking toward the future. The samurai saw their sword as a reflection of their own life, and by caring for it, they were expressing their commitment to the values they held dear. And as the samurai passes their sword down to the next generation, the sword handle becomes more than just a piece of wood. It becomes a legacy, a symbol of the warrior's values, and an extension of their honor. The sword handle carries the stories of those who have wielded it, the battles they've fought, and the victories they've achieved. It's a reminder that the samurai's spirit lives on, not just in their actions but in the weapons they leave behind. The handle, then, is a piece of history that continues to live on in the hearts of those who carry it. You reflect on how this legacy has endured through the centuries, how the samurai's values, honor, discipline, respect, have remained relevant even in the modern world. The sword handle, once crafted with such care and reverence, now serves as a link between the past and the present. It's a reminder of a time when warriors fought not just for survival, but for something much greater, a way of life, a code, and a deep sense of personal honor. As you finish your work, you feel a sense of pride, knowing that your craftsmanship will live on in the hands of a future warrior. The sword handle is now ready to begin its journey, ready to be part of someone else's story. You can almost hear the soft rustle of the Tsuka, the quiet hum of the sword as it is drawn from its sheath. It's a tool of strength, yes, but it's also a tool of memory, a tool of legacy. And in the end, that is perhaps the most important thing a samurai sword handle can be, a living, breathing piece of history. And with that final thought, you take a deep breath, the weight of the task finally lifting from your shoulders. The sword handle is complete. The warrior's journey, and the sword's legacy, will continue for generations to come. The night seems to stretch on as you sit in the quiet of the workshop, your thoughts drifting as you gaze upon the sword handle you've just completed. It's a quiet moment, a rare pause in the flow of time. You can't help but think back to the days when the samurai walked the earth, wielding their blades with unmatched precision, their sword handles like silent companions. But now, as the centuries have passed, their story remains, immortalized in the weapons they left behind. The sword handle, though humble in its material form, carries with it a deep sense of history. In the past, this handle would have been passed down through generations, a cherished family heirloom. In some ways, it's not just the samurai who live on through their swords. It's the very essence of their values, their honor, and their commitment to their code of conduct. Every time a samurai passed down their sword, they were passing down more than just a weapon. They were passing down their spirit, their legacy, and their family's traditions. But the sword handle is also more than a mere heirloom. It is an active participant in the samurai's life. Imagine the warrior, gripping that handle with a steady hand, feeling the weight of the sword and the connection to their own strength. In many ways, the handle is a bridge between the physical and the spiritual. The samurai believed that the sword was not just a weapon, it was a reflection of their soul. And the handle was the direct link between that soul and the blade. How they held the sword, how they gripped the handle, was said to speak volumes about the warrior's mindset. Some historians argue that the samurai saw their swords as extensions of their very beings. They practiced with their swords for hours, shaping their movements and refining their techniques, all the while becoming one with the weapon. The handle was where this connection was made, where the samurai's body and spirit came together with the sword's craftsmanship. It's fascinating to consider how something as simple as the feel of the handle could influence the way a samurai fought. A well-balanced handle allowed for fluid movements, a steady grip, and a warrior who moved with grace and strength. The handle's significance, of course, wasn't just in battle. Outside of combat, the samurai's sword was a constant companion. It was carried with them at all times, a symbol of their rank, their honor, and their place in society. The handle, decorated with family crests or personal symbols, was a way of showcasing not just the samurai's skill but their identity. It was a statement of who they were. And as the samurai walked through life, their sword was always by their side, its handle firmly grasped, a constant reminder of the values they held dear. Historians still argue over the role of the sword in the samurai's daily life. Was it a purely practical weapon, used only in battle, or was it something more, a spiritual companion, a constant reminder of the warrior's honor and duty? The truth is likely somewhere in between. For the samurai, their sword was both a tool and a symbol. It was a weapon, yes, but it was also a part of their identity. The sword handle, in particular, was where this identity was most clearly expressed. The way the handle was crafted, the way it was wrapped, the materials used, all of these were carefully chosen to reflect the samurai's values, their family's lineage, and their place in the warrior class. As you reflect on the sword handle before you, you can't help but think about how it will one day serve as a link between generations. Just as the samurai passed down their swords from father to son, the sword handle will continue its journey, carrying with it the spirit of the warrior who once wielded it. The handle, now complete, will eventually find its place in the hands of a new samurai, who will, in turn, continue the legacy. The journey of the sword handle doesn't end when it leaves your workshop. It will be carried by a new warrior, who will hold it with pride, with reverence, and with the same sense of responsibility that the samurai before them carried. And with each new warrior, the handle will become a part of their story, a reflection of their journey, their battles, and their legacy. But for now, as the night deepens, the sword handle rests quietly, a completed work that holds within it the spirit of countless samurai. It is no longer just a piece of wood, silk, and metal. It is a living, breathing part of history, waiting for its next chapter to unfold. You've played your part in its creation, but the sword handle will continue its journey far beyond the walls of this workshop, passing from hand to hand, from warrior to warrior, carrying with it the essence of those who came before. The legacy of the samurai, embodied in the sword and its handle, will continue to live on, transcending time and space. And as you sit back, you feel a sense of peace, knowing that this sword handle, like all those that came before it, will carry the spirit of the samurai forward into the future. The moonlight now filters gently through the room, casting long shadows across your workbench as you continue to contemplate the life of the samurai sword handle. It's a moment of quiet reflection, as you realize how much more this piece of craftsmanship represents than just a weapon or a functional object. The handle is a deeply symbolic part of the sword, a testament not just to the art of combat, but to the samurai's philosophy, their way of life, and the spirit they carried into every battle. As you think about the legacy of the samurai, you realize how much of their world revolved around the sword, and more specifically the sword handle. To the samurai, the handle was more than just a part of the weapon. It was the point of connection between the warrior and the blade. It was a link between their body and the sword, between their mind and their spirit. When they gripped the handle, they were not simply holding a tool, they were holding their very essence. The sword became an extension of themselves, a part of their soul that would be carried into every fight. Historians still debate how much the samurai believed in this spiritual connection between themselves and their swords. Some argue that the samurai viewed their swords as sacred objects, vessels for their honor and spirit, while others suggest that the samurai's attachment to their sword was more about practical use, a weapon that they trained with daily to hone their skills. The truth, as with most aspects of samurai culture, is likely a combination of both. The sword handle, in particular, was the point at which both the physical and spiritual aspects of the weapon came together. It was the place where the samurai's grip, their intentions, and their soul all intertwined. But what happens when the samurai is gone? When the warrior has passed, what becomes of the sword and its handle? The answer is simple. The sword, like the samurai themselves, continues to live on. In the samurai tradition, the sword and its handle were passed down through generations, handed from father to son, from one warrior to the next. And in doing so, the legacy of the samurai was preserved, not just in the blade but in the handle. The handle, like the warrior, lived on as a symbol of the values that the samurai held dear: honor, duty, and discipline. You pause and think about how the sword handle was often treated with such reverence by samurai families. When a samurai died, their sword would be carefully cleaned, polished, and wrapped, often with special cloth, as a way of preserving its spiritual essence. The handle, decorated with intricate designs and symbols, would be treated as a sacred object, a family heirloom that carried the warrior's spirit and legacy forward. It wasn't just about the blade. It was about the handle, the part of the sword that represented the warrior's connection to their past, to their ancestors, and to the traditions they upheld. As the sword was passed down through the generations, the handle would carry with it the story of the warrior's life. The wear and tear on the handle, the scuff marks, the scratches, all of these were physical markers of the warrior's battles, their struggles, and their triumphs. In this way, the handle became a living record of the warrior's journey, a tangible connection to their legacy. The sword handle was not just a part of the weapon, it was a part of the warrior themselves, a piece of their soul that would continue to live on long after they were gone. The beauty of the sword handle, then, is in its ability to transcend time and space. While the blade may rust or dull over the years, the handle remains a constant. It is a reminder of the warrior's strength, their honor, and their unwavering commitment to the way of bushido. The handle may change over time, new wrappings may be added, the fittings may be adjusted, but the essence of the samurai remains intact. The handle is a living, breathing part of the warrior's legacy, a symbol of their enduring spirit. In a way, the sword handle becomes more than just a tool for battle. It becomes a guardian of the warrior's memory. It carries the weight of their honor, their family's history, and the code they lived by. When the samurai grips the handle, they are not just preparing for a fight, they are embracing their past, their identity, and their duty. And when the sword is passed down to the next generation, the handle continues to carry that same weight, that same honor, forward into the future. As you look down at the handle before you, you realize just how much more it represents than just craftsmanship. It's a symbol of continuity, a link between past, present, and future. The handle has connected the samurai to their sword, to their spirit, and to their legacy, and now, it will continue to connect future generations to that same history. The sword handle, simple as it may seem, is a vessel of the samurai's soul, a piece of their identity that will live on, long after the battles have ended. The silence of the room feels peaceful, almost reverent, as you place the completed handle on the table before you. This is more than just a weapon. It's a legacy, a living connection between the past and the future. And in that quiet moment, you feel a deep sense of pride and fulfillment, knowing that the samurai's story, through the sword handle, will continue to live on, passed down through generations, forever carrying the spirit of the warrior into the future. The quiet of the room has settled into something peaceful, the weight of your completed work hanging in the air. The samurai sword handle before you, polished and wrapped, now stands as the culmination of the tradition, the philosophy, and the culture of the warrior. Yet, it's not the end. This handle, this simple but crucial part of the sword, will travel far beyond this room, through time, through generations, and through battles fought. It will become part of a legacy that echoes through history. As you step back and look at your creation, you begin to understand the true meaning of the sword handle. It's not just a piece of wood wrapped in silk, it's a piece of history. The handle has been imbued with meaning, carrying the spirit of the samurai who will one day wield it. It's a tool, yes, but it's also a symbol of honor, pride, and identity. As you hold it in your hands, you feel the weight of centuries of tradition and the spirit of the samurai warrior. You reflect on how, for the samurai, their sword was far more than just a weapon. It was an extension of their soul, a reflection of their personal code. Their sword handle was part of their identity, their honor, and their life. It was quite literally the handle of their fate. How they gripped it, how they held it, defined them as warriors. When they fought, they were not simply fighting for survival, they were fighting for their honor, their family, and their place in history. Historians still argue whether the samurai saw their sword as a tool or a spiritual weapon. Some suggest that samurai considered their sword a sacred object, something that held the soul of their ancestors. Others argue that it was simply a weapon, one of the many tools they used in battle. But regardless of the interpretation, it's clear that the sword handle, with all its symbolism, played a key role in how the samurai connected to their weapon, and in turn, to their identity. As you place the completed handle aside, you begin to understand that this small part of the sword is, in many ways, the heart of the weapon. The handle is where the samurai's hand meets the blade, where their strength, focus, and spirit come together. The sword's blade may strike the enemy, but it is the handle that allows the samurai to wield it with precision, grace, and honor. It's the point of connection between the samurai's body and their weapon, where their life force flows through the blade. The beauty of the sword handle lies in its simplicity. It's not about being ornate or flashy. The handle is designed for function, yes, but its beauty lies in the care and craftsmanship that goes into it. The handle, wrapped tightly with silk cord, reflects the discipline and precision of the samurai themselves. The handle is a reflection of the warrior's inner strength, their ability to maintain control in the midst of chaos. You imagine the samurai who will eventually wield this sword, their fingers gripping the handle with a steady hand. The sword will become an extension of them, and the handle will be the point where that connection is made. As they move, the sword will respond, fluid and graceful, reflecting the samurai's training, discipline, and resolve. The handle will become a part of them, a reflection of their inner spirit and strength. In this quiet moment, you realize that your work is done, but the journey of the sword handle has only just begun. The handle will be passed on from one warrior to the next, carried through the ages as a symbol of the samurai's legacy. It will be passed down, wrapped in reverence, becoming a part of the family's history, a part of the warrior's soul. It will carry the memory of battles fought and won, of honor upheld, and of traditions passed from generation to generation. The sword handle, though simple, is a piece of history that will live on long after you've finished your work. It's a testament to the samurai's code, to their commitment to honor, and to their connection to something much larger than themselves. It's not just a tool, it's a symbol of everything the samurai stood for, and everything they passed on to the future. It's a connection between the past and the future, between the warrior and the world they leave behind. As you step away from the workbench, the sword handle resting quietly on the table, you feel a deep sense of fulfillment. You have created more than just a part of a weapon. You've created a piece of history, a piece of tradition, and a piece of the samurai spirit. And as you close your eyes, you can almost hear the faint echo of the samurai, their hands gripping the sword handle, their spirits carried forward into the future. As the darkness outside deepens, you find yourself continuing to reflect on the samurai's sword handle, still resting before you, as though it holds the very essence of the samurai world within it. You've spent hours crafting it, shaping it, adding the intricate details that turn a simple object into something far more meaningful. Yet even now, you feel that the handle's journey is far from over. It will soon move into the hands of a warrior, and in that moment, it will truly come alive, ready to serve not just as a weapon, but as an extension of their spirit. As you think about the samurai's sword handle, it's clear that this piece of craftsmanship has a life beyond just being a functional part of the weapon. It's a symbol of the samurai's code of conduct, their discipline, and their spiritual connection to the blade. But the handle's importance doesn't end there. It's also a part of the larger cultural and philosophical system that guided the samurai's life. The very act of crafting the handle was a reflection of the samurai's commitment to their ideals, their honor, and their way of life. The samurai were known for their strict adherence to bushido, the code of the warrior, and their swords were a direct reflection of this. The sword was a tool, but it was also a symbol of the samurai's strength, of their loyalty, and of their place in society. Historians still argue whether the sword was simply a weapon, or if it was something more, a reflection of the samurai's very soul. While the blade was certainly a vital part of the weapon, the sword handle was the link between the warrior and the sword itself, allowing the two to become one. The sword handle, particularly the wrapping, played an important role in this connection. It was here that the samurai's hand met the blade, where their will was transferred into the weapon. The way the handle was crafted, the way it was wrapped with the silk cord, was a reflection of the samurai's inner discipline. A well-wrapped handle allowed for a tight, secure grip, enabling the samurai to wield the sword with precision and control. And just as the samurai trained tirelessly to master their combat skills, so too did they take great care in the crafting of their sword and its handle. When you step back and think about it, the sword handle is really a mirror of the samurai's philosophy. Every part of it, from the choice of wood to the design of the fittings, is a reflection of the samurai's values. The simplicity and elegance of the handle, its careful construction, the way it's wrapped, the balance of the blade, speak to the samurai's sense of purpose and order. For the samurai, the sword was more than just a tool of war. It was an embodiment of their values, their honor, and their spirit. And as you finish the final touches, you realize that your role in this process was more than just crafting a piece of weaponry. You've crafted a link between the past and the future. The samurai sword handle is a bridge between generations, a piece of tradition that will live on in the hands of future warriors. The sword handle, once complete, will carry with it the spirit of the samurai, honor, discipline, strength, and serve as a reminder of the code they lived by. The sword handle, as simple as it may seem, holds a great deal of power. It holds the power to connect the samurai to their blade, to their ancestors, and to their own sense of identity. It's not just a part of the weapon, it is the connection between the samurai's past and their future. It's a symbol of everything the samurai believed in, and everything they fought for. In this quiet moment, as you place the sword handle down, you understand its true significance. It's not just a part of the sword, it's a living, breathing embodiment of the samurai spirit, a connection to a tradition that spans centuries. As the handle passes from one generation to the next, it will carry with it the wisdom of the past, the strength of the present, and the honor of the future. And with that understanding, you feel a deep sense of satisfaction. You've not just crafted a weapon, you've crafted a legacy. The samurai spirit will live on, passed down through generations, carried in the hands of those who will wield the sword with the same honor, discipline, and resolve that the warriors of old carried with them. The night draws closer, and the soft hum of the world outside seems almost in tune with the stillness of your workshop. The sword handle lies before you, its polished surface gleaming softly in the muted light. It's as though the handle itself is waiting, ready to be part of a greater story. This moment of quiet reflection holds deep meaning, as you realize that this small piece of craftsmanship has a role in a legacy that stretches far beyond your own hands. As you continue to think about the samurai's sword and its handle, you come to realize just how much the handle influenced the warrior's experience in battle. The grip wasn't simply a tool to hold the sword, it was the key to wielding it with precision and power. The samurai's every movement, every strike, depended on the connection between their hand and the sword. The sword handle was where the warrior's physical body met the weapon, where their intentions and resolve were transferred into the blade. In a sense, the handle acted as a conduit for the samurai's spirit, channeling their strength, focus, and discipline into their every action. Historians continue to debate whether the samurai viewed the sword handle as just a functional tool, or whether it was imbued with deeper spiritual significance. Some believe the samurai saw their sword handle as a reflection of their soul, believing that it was the handle that allowed them to channel their spirit into the sword. The quality of the grip, the tightness of the wrapping, and the way the samurai held the handle were said to influence the sword's response in battle. In this view, the handle wasn't just a piece of wood. It was a conduit for the warrior's energy, their emotions, and their intent. The way a samurai gripped the handle of their sword could indicate much about their state of mind. A relaxed grip, calm and focused, was said to be the mark of a seasoned warrior, while a tense grip could reflect uncertainty or anger. Some even believed that the sword, especially the handle, could respond to the samurai's inner state, reacting to their emotions and intentions. If the samurai was at peace with themselves, their movements would be fluid and precise, as though the sword and its handle were extensions of their own body. If they were agitated, the sword might feel unbalanced, unresponsive. When the samurai drew their sword from its sheath, they were not simply preparing for battle, they were engaging in a spiritual act. The sword handle, firm in their hand, would guide the blade with deadly precision, but it also served as a reminder of their responsibility. The samurai knew that their sword was not just a tool for fighting, it was a tool for honor, a weapon forged in tradition, and an extension of their personal code. Every cut, every movement, was done with the utmost care, as if their very soul was entwined with the blade. As you think about the journey of this sword handle, you realize that it's not just about the warrior's individual battle. It's about the sword's role in the larger narrative of samurai life. The sword handle wasn't simply a piece of wood, it was a part of a larger system, a cultural practice that governed the samurai's entire existence. The handle, like the warrior, carried with it the weight of history, tradition, and identity. The samurai were bound by their code, and the sword handle was an integral part of that bond. It wasn't just a tool of war, it was a symbol of the samurai's place in the world, their connection to their ancestors, and their responsibility to their family, clan, and society. The handle would eventually find its way into the hands of a new warrior. And as it did, it would carry with it the legacy of those who had come before. This piece of wood, now wrapped in silk, would serve as a link between the past and the future. The warrior who holds it will not just wield a sword, they will wield the spirit of their ancestors. The handle will carry the stories of the warriors who have held it before, each mark and scratch a reflection of the battles fought, the lives lived, and the honor upheld. You realize that in many ways, the sword handle is a bridge that connects generations of warriors to one another. It carries forward the teachings, the traditions, and the values of the samurai, from one hand to the next. And in doing so, it helps ensure that the warrior's spirit endures long after they have passed. The sword handle is not simply an object, it is a vessel for memory, for legacy, and for history. As you finish your work, you can't help but feel a sense of peace. You've crafted more than just a part of a weapon. You've crafted a link between past and future, between the warrior and their legacy. The handle is now ready to be part of something greater than itself. It will carry forward the spirit of the samurai, continuing their journey, passing their lessons from one generation to the next. And in that quiet moment, as you look at the handle, you know that the samurai spirit will live on, long after the last battle has been fought, carried through the hands of future warriors who will wield it with honor, with strength, and with grace. The workshop is now calm, with only the sound of your breath filling the space, yet the weight of history still lingers. As you sit back and reflect on the journey of the sword handle, its role in the grand tapestry of samurai life becomes clearer than ever. The handle, simple as it may seem, is a silent yet powerful agent of continuity, an artifact that carries the spirit of those who have held it, those who will hold it, and the values they uphold. As you look at the handle before you, you're reminded that it's not just about creating a weapon. It's about crafting a piece of a greater story, one that transcends the limits of time and space. The sword handle isn't just a part of the weapon. It's a connection to the past, a legacy that links the samurai to their ancestors, their traditions, and their duty. The samurai didn't just wield a sword, they wielded a piece of their history, and the handle was the key that unlocked that connection. There is a deeper layer of significance in the way the samurai viewed their sword and its handle. It wasn't just about the act of fighting, it was about the personal journey each warrior went through as they honed their skills and adhered to their code. The sword was not just a tool for war, it was a reflection of their internal discipline, their spiritual connection to their ancestors, and their place in a long tradition of warriors. The handle, with its craftsmanship, its grip, and its decoration, was a direct reflection of the warrior's place in that lineage. The samurai's bond with their sword handle goes beyond just functional considerations. Historians continue to debate whether the samurai viewed their sword purely as a weapon, or whether it held a more spiritual meaning, embodying their soul and purpose. Some argue that the handle itself held a spiritual significance, not just in terms of its symbolism, but in how it connected the samurai to their own spirit and purpose. The way they gripped the handle, how it felt in their hands, was said to shape their connection with their sword and their sense of self. It was almost as if the handle acted as a conduit between the samurai and the blade, channeling their resolve, focus, and spirit into every strike. This connection between the sword handle and the samurai's inner world is fascinating. The way the sword felt, how it responded to the samurai's grip, could reflect their mental and emotional state. Historians still argue whether this was purely a result of the samurai's training, where they honed their physical and mental disciplines to such an extent that their sword became an extension of their body, or whether there was something more spiritual at play. Regardless, the sword handle remained the critical link, the physical connection between the samurai and their weapon, and through it, their very spirit. But the sword handle was not just a tool of battle. It also served as a symbol of the samurai's social status and identity. In many ways, the appearance of the handle spoke volumes about the samurai's place in society. The type of wood used, the wrapping pattern, the fittings, each of these elements conveyed information about the samurai's rank, lineage, and personal identity. In a culture where honor and reputation were paramount, the sword handle became an outward display of who the samurai was, what they stood for, and where they came from. It wasn't enough for a samurai to simply wield a sword. They had to display it with pride, with craftsmanship that spoke to their high status and the legacy they carried. As you reflect on the craftsmanship of the handle, you realize that the material aspects of the sword are just as important as the philosophy behind them. The samurai understood the balance between functionality and beauty. They valued practicality in combat, yes, but they also recognized the importance of tradition and aesthetics. The sword handle wasn't just about creating something that could be used in battle. It was about crafting something that reflected the samurai's soul, their character, and their commitment to their path. The intricate design of the handle, the way the wrapping was woven, the detail in the guard and pommel, all of these elements were a reflection of the warrior's spirit. It's a balance between form and function, between the beauty of the craftsmanship and the utility of the weapon. In this way, the sword handle was not just a part of the samurai's gear, it was an extension of themselves. The sword handle allowed them to wield their blade with precision, grace, and power, all while maintaining the deepest respect for the traditions that came before them. The samurai were not simply warriors, they were the caretakers of a tradition, guardians of a way of life that was founded on honor, discipline, and respect. As you finish crafting the sword handle, the final steps feel almost like a quiet, spiritual release. The handle is not just an object, it is the embodiment of the samurai's philosophy, their connection to their ancestors, and their legacy that will be passed down through the generations. It is ready for the hands of the warrior, ready to serve its purpose in the larger story of the samurai's life. The work is done, but the journey of the sword handle has only just begun. It will continue to carry the spirit of the samurai forward, through time and across generations. The handle, now complete, will become part of the warrior's story, part of their legacy, and will live on long after the battles have ended. You take a deep breath and step back, feeling the satisfaction of completing a piece of history. The sword handle, though simple in form, is now imbued with meaning, purpose, and spirit. It's ready to take its place in the world, carrying the essence of the samurai for generations to come. The quiet of the night seems to hold its breath as you survey your work, the sword handle resting before you, poised to continue its journey. The smooth, polished grip glints softly under the faint light, and in this stillness, you can almost hear the whispers of the samurai who once carried a similar weapon. Their presence lingers in the very fibers of the handle, woven into the fabric of the tradition you've now completed. The true weight of the sword handle's significance comes into focus as you reflect on its place in the life of the samurai. More than just a piece of craftsmanship, it is a symbol of everything the samurai held dear: honor, courage, and an unwavering commitment to their code. The handle is not merely functional. It is a part of the samurai's identity, their soul. It is where the warrior's spirit meets the weapon, and where the sword begins to fulfill its role as both a tool of war and a sacred object. Historians still debate the depth of the samurai's spiritual connection with their sword. Some argue that the samurai saw their sword, and by extension its handle, as a living entity. This belief is rooted in the animist traditions of Japan, where objects and natural elements are thought to possess spirits. For the samurai, their sword wasn't just a tool, it was an extension of themselves, imbued with their spirit, their will, and their honor. The handle, then, became the focal point for this spiritual bond. It was the place where the samurai could connect with the sword on a deeply personal level, where their identity and their weapon became one. But the sword handle's journey doesn't end when it's placed in the warrior's hand. After each battle, after each trial, the sword is cleaned, polished, and maintained, just as the samurai must tend to their inner discipline. The handle is wrapped, rewrapped, and adjusted, a reflection of the constant care the samurai give to their own minds and spirits. It's a daily ritual, one that keeps both the sword and the warrior in alignment, ready for whatever challenges lie ahead. In the samurai tradition, the handle also serves as a marker of social status. A samurai's sword, particularly the quality of its handle, was a direct representation of their family's lineage and their personal reputation. It wasn't uncommon for samurai to invest significant resources into crafting a handle that would reflect their position in society. The designs and materials used, whether it was simple, elegant silk wrapping or more elaborate designs featuring family crests or precious metals, spoke volumes about the samurai's rank. The sword handle, though it played a functional role, also had the ability to announce to the world who the samurai was and what they stood for. But beyond the aesthetic and symbolic aspects, the sword handle's true importance lies in its function. The grip, the Tsuka, was an essential component of the sword's performance. A poorly constructed handle could render the sword nearly useless in battle. If the handle wasn't balanced, the samurai's swing could be thrown off, their strikes ineffective. On the other hand, a well-crafted handle allowed the warrior to fight with precision, agility, and confidence. It was a tool of both physical and psychological empowerment. The warrior who held the sword with a perfectly balanced grip could focus on their battle strategy, knowing that their weapon would respond to their every command. The importance of the sword handle in shaping the samurai's approach to battle cannot be understated. In the heat of combat, the handle provided the necessary support for the warrior's strikes, thrusts, and parries. It was the constant anchor, the connection between the warrior's movements and their weapon. The samurai, in their mastery of the sword, understood this connection deeply, and the sword handle was an integral part of that mastery. But the sword and its handle wasn't just a tool for war, it was a constant companion throughout the samurai's life. Whether they were in the midst of battle or engaged in a quiet moment of reflection, their sword was always by their side. It was a symbol of their ongoing commitment to the way of the warrior, a way that encompassed both the physical and spiritual realms. The handle, as the most personal part of the sword, became the point at which the samurai's body and mind intersected with their weapon. Every movement, every action, was a reflection of their inner discipline, their spiritual journey, and their sense of purpose. Now, as you stand before the finished sword handle, you can't help but feel the weight of its meaning. It's no longer just a piece of wood and cord, it's a piece of history, a piece of identity, and a piece of a much larger story. The samurai sword handle is not merely a part of a weapon, it is a vessel for memory, for legacy, for honor. It will live on through generations, carried by warriors who will wield it with the same care, precision, and reverence as the samurai who came before them. And as you finish your work, you realize that you've done more than create a weapon. You've helped preserve a legacy, a connection to the past, and a promise to the future. The sword handle will live on, carrying with it the spirit of the samurai, their honor, and their tradition. It will be passed down through the generations, each new warrior adding their own story to the handle's history, and in doing so, continuing the legacy of the samurai. With that thought, you place the handle down one final time. It rests there, ready for its next journey, its next chapter in the story of the samurai. The craftsmanship is complete, but the sword's journey, and the handle's journey, is far from over. And in this quiet moment, you feel a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that your work has become part of something much larger than yourself, a living piece of history that will carry the samurai spirit forward for generations to come. The calm of the workshop surrounds you as you reflect on everything that's gone into the sword handle, the meticulous attention to detail, the reverence with which you've crafted it, and the deeper connections that it now embodies. You've completed something more than just a piece of craftsmanship. You've created a bridge, a living link between past and future, between the samurai warrior and their weapon. In many ways, the handle is the soul of the sword. It is the point where the samurai's identity merges with their weapon, where the abstract becomes tangible. The handle is what makes the sword personal. It is where the warrior's hand, their power, and their resolve meet the blade. It is the physical connection between them and the sword, and through this connection, they become one. Without a properly crafted handle, a sword would be no more than a blade, a sharp piece of steel that lacks the connection to the warrior's spirit, their honor, their life. It is here, at the intersection of the blade and the warrior, that you realize how important the samurai's sword handle is. It is not just a physical object, it is the heart of the weapon, the essence of the warrior's spirit, a symbol of their discipline and honor. The handle is the anchor in battle, the grounding point for the samurai's movements. With every strike, every defensive maneuver, every calculated movement of the sword, the handle is there, quietly supporting the warrior and ensuring that their intentions, their soul, are reflected in the sword's every motion. The act of creating the sword handle, too, is more than just a task. It is a ritual in itself. In shaping the handle, you are shaping the very essence of the samurai's connection to their weapon. Each curve, each knot of the silk cord, each fitting of the guard and pommel serves to solidify the bond between the warrior and the sword. The handle is a vessel for the samurai's discipline, their philosophy, and their commitment to their way of life. It is both a practical tool and a spiritual object, embodying the balance that the samurai strive to maintain in every aspect of their existence. In the samurai tradition, every aspect of their life, whether it be combat, meditation, or even mundane daily tasks, was approached with the same level of discipline and respect. The sword, and by extension its handle, was central to this philosophy. The samurai knew that their weapon was an extension of their soul, and they treated it with the utmost reverence. The careful crafting of the handle was part of this reverence, ensuring that the sword was not just a weapon, but a symbol of the samurai's personal code, their commitment to honor, and their role in society. But even after the sword has been forged and its handle crafted, the journey of the sword doesn't stop. After it has been passed down to a new warrior, the handle will continue to evolve. It will be wrapped, rewrapped, and polished, sometimes with new fittings or additional decorations. Each new layer tells the story of the samurai who has wielded it, and each new touch adds to its legacy. As the sword is passed from generation to generation, its handle carries the memories of the warriors who have held it. The handle's form, though it may change, remains an enduring symbol of the warrior's path. You start to think about the hundreds, maybe thousands, of sword handles that have existed over the centuries. Each one was a part of a story, some wielded in battles fought on the bloodied fields of Japan, others passed down through generations of warriors. And in every case, the sword handle was not just a weapon, it was a part of the warrior's soul, an extension of their spirit, a reflection of their honor. Even today, the legacy of the samurai endures. While the world has changed, the spirit of the samurai still resonates in many cultures, in the discipline of martial arts, in the reverence for honor and duty. The sword handle, once crafted with such care, continues to represent these values. It lives on as a symbol of the strength of character that the samurai embodied. It is a reminder that, in all things, discipline and honor are the foundations of a warrior's life. As you finish the final task, placing the sword handle down with care, There is a quiet satisfaction in knowing that the sword is now ready. The samurai who will eventually wield it will not just hold a weapon. They will hold a piece of history, a piece of tradition. The handle will become part of their identity, part of their honor, and it will carry with it the spirit of the samurai, passed down through generations. The warrior will become one with their sword, and in doing so, they will carry forward the legacy of those who came before. And so, as you stand back and admire your work, you realize that the sword handle is more than just an object. It is a symbol, a living connection between past and future, a piece of the warrior's soul that will endure for generations to come. It will carry the spirit of the samurai forward, and in that spirit, you too are part of a long line of craftspeople, warriors, and keepers of tradition. The sword handle you've crafted will live on, just as the samurai's legacy will continue to echo through the ages. The workshop now feels still, as though holding its breath, as the sword handle, now complete, lies resting quietly before you. The work has been long, the craft meticulous, but there's a deep satisfaction in knowing that the piece you've just completed is more than just a tool. It's a living embodiment of a warrior's legacy. With every cut, every wrap, every careful knot, you've not just created a weapon, you've forged a piece of history. As your gaze lingers on the sword handle, you think about how it will carry with it the spirit of the samurai, continuing its journey long after you've finished your work. The path of the sword handle doesn't end here. It's only the beginning. The handle, now crafted to perfection, will soon be placed in the hands of a samurai, and with each new warrior who grasps it, the handle will continue its journey, passing from hand to hand, generation to generation. Each warrior will add their own mark, their own story to the handle, and as time passes, the handle will become a living testament to the legacy of the samurai, a piece of their history that will endure through the ages. Historians still debate whether the samurai truly believed that their sword, and by extension its handle, held a spiritual connection to their soul. Some argue that the samurai saw their sword as a sacred object, imbued with their essence, while others believe that the sword was simply a tool, albeit an important one, that reflected the samurai's craftsmanship and skill. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. The sword handle, like the sword itself, was both a tool and a symbol. It was a part of the warrior's daily life, but it was also a reflection of their soul, their spirit, and their honor. In the samurai's eyes, the sword was not just an object of war. It was an extension of themselves, a symbol of their honor and duty. The sword handle was the most intimate part of the weapon, the point where the warrior's hand, their body, and their spirit connected with the blade. It was through this handle that the samurai's soul was passed into the sword, and it was through the handle that the sword became more than just a weapon. It became an extension of the samurai's very essence. You reflect on how the samurai were taught to live their lives with discipline, precision, and honor. Every aspect of their lives, from their practice with the sword to the way they held themselves in society, was a reflection of the bushido code, the way of the warrior. The sword and its handle were not merely tools for combat, they were symbols of the samurai's commitment to this code. The handle was a reminder of their duty to themselves, their families, and their country. It was a reflection of their inner strength and the values that guided their lives. As the handle rests before you, now complete, you begin to understand just how much it represents. It is not just a part of a weapon, it is a link to the past, a bridge between generations of warriors. The handle, as simple as it may seem, is a vessel for the samurai's legacy. It will carry with it the stories of battles fought, victories won, and sacrifices made. It will be passed down from one warrior to the next, each time with a new chapter to add to its history. The sword handle also embodies the essence of continuity. While the warriors who wield it may change, the spirit of the samurai remains constant. The handle, as it moves from one hand to another, from one generation to the next, carries with it the values of bushido, honor, loyalty, courage, and discipline. These values are not bound by time. They are timeless, passed on from father to son, from master to disciple. And in this way, the sword handle becomes a living symbol of the warrior's spirit, continuing to inspire and guide those who follow in the footsteps of the samurai. You feel a sense of peace, knowing that the work you've done will carry forward, not just as a part of a weapon, but as a part of history. The sword handle will one day be held by a new warrior, someone who will add their own story to its legacy, who will live by the same code and fight for the same honor as the warriors who came before them. And with each new warrior, the handle will continue to serve as a reminder of the samurai's enduring spirit. With this thought, you take a deep breath, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment wash over you. The sword handle, now finished, will live on, carrying with it the strength, the spirit, and the honor of the samurai for generations to come. Your work, though seemingly small, is part of something much larger than yourself, a living testament to the warrior's journey, a connection between the past and the future, and a symbol of the enduring legacy of the samurai. The world around you feels calm and settled now, the work done, and the sword handle, perfect in its form, rests before you. As you sit in the silence of the workshop, the weight of history presses gently upon your shoulders. The handle, crafted with such care and attention, is now ready to continue its journey. Its story, intertwined with that of the samurai, will persist far beyond this moment. You can almost hear the faint whispers of warriors past, their hands gripping this very handle, their spirits lingering in the connection between the samurai and their weapon. In your work, you have become a part of that story. The craftsmanship you've put into this handle isn't just a technical achievement, it's a contribution to the lasting legacy of the samurai. Every thread wrapped tightly around the handle, every careful fitting of the guard, every decision made during the creation process, carries the weight of centuries of tradition. You've taken something ordinary and transformed it into something extraordinary. This sword handle, once completed, will serve as a silent but powerful testament to the values of bushido, the way of the warrior. As you step back and take in the full scope of your work, you realize that the sword handle is more than just a part of a weapon. It's a connection between the past, present, and future. It carries with it the values and the spirit of the samurai, and it will continue to do so, passed from one generation to the next. It will be held by many hands, used in countless battles, but it will always carry the same essence. The essence of the warrior, the strength of their resolve, and the spirit of their code. The sword handle, you realize, is not merely an object. It is a living, breathing part of the samurai's life, their identity, and their legacy. Every time it is passed down, every time it is gripped by a new warrior, it takes on new meaning. It becomes a part of the warrior's journey, a part of their story. It is the silent partner in their battles, their struggles, and their triumphs. And like the warrior themselves, the sword handle carries the weight of honor, duty, and discipline. You take one last look at the handle, now complete and ready for its new owner. You know that it will serve as a bridge, connecting the samurai to their history, their ancestors, and the warriors who will follow them. The handle will carry the legacy of bushido forward, not just as a weapon, but as a symbol, a reminder of what it means to be a samurai. It is more than just a part of the sword. It is the heart of the sword, the soul of the warrior, and the spirit of their way of life. And with that thought, you feel a sense of peace settle over you. Your work is done, and the sword handle is ready to continue its journey. It will live on, passed down through the generations, carrying with it the strength, the wisdom, and the honor of the samurai. The legacy of the warrior will endure, and in this quiet moment, you understand that your craft, your contribution, is part of something much larger than yourself. It is part of a story that has spanned centuries, and it will continue for generations to come. As the night grows deeper, you take a final, slow breath, knowing that the spirit of the samurai will live on through the sword, through the handle, and through those who carry it. And with that knowledge, you feel a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing that you have played a small but vital part in preserving the legacy of the samurai, a legacy that will continue to inspire and guide warriors for centuries to come. Now, as the final moments of the day fade into silence, you let go of the tension in your shoulders and feel a deep satisfaction in the stillness. The sword handle, now complete, is ready to continue its journey, just as the spirit of the samurai continues its journey through time. Your work here is done, but the story of the sword, of the handle, of the warrior, will live on.